Hear this with clarity and courage. There are battles you were never meant to fight with your voice, your hands, or your explanations. There are moments when strength is not proven by how loudly you speak, but by how deeply you trust. Silence, when guided by faith, is not surrender, it is strategy. And when you step back in obedience, God steps forward in power. Silence is often misunderstood because the world equates strength with volume and influence with constant response. Yet faith operates by a different measure. Silence chosen in faith is not retreat, hesitation, or fear. It is confidence rooted in trust. It reflects an understanding that not every moment requires a reply, and not every challenge demands a defense. Silence becomes a deliberate decision to rely on God rather than personal reaction. When faith guides silence, it restrains impulse. Human nature urges immediate explanation, correction, and retaliation. Silence resists that urge. It pauses the tongue while strengthening the spirit. This restraint is not passivity, it is control. Control, grounded in faith, allows wisdom to lead rather than emotion. Silence protects the heart from unnecessary battles. Many conflicts gain power only when fed with reaction. Arguments grow louder when answered. Accusations spread faster when defended. Silence starves distraction and denies conflict the attention it seeks. Faith understands that peace is worth more than proving a point. Choosing silence requires confidence in divine justice. It reflects belief that truth does not need constant defense to survive. Faith trusts that what is hidden will be revealed and what is false will eventually collapse. Silence allows time and truth to work together without interference. Silence also refines character. It tests patience and reveals maturity. Speaking is easy. Remaining silent when provoked demands discipline. This discipline strengthens spiritual authority. Authority grows not through dominance, but through composure. Composure demonstrates security in identity and trust in purpose. Faith-filled silence sharpens discernment. It creates space to listen rather than react. In stillness, understanding deepens. Decisions become clearer. Silence removes noise that clouds judgment. Faith listens before acting, waits before responding, and trusts before asserting. Silence prevents regret. Words spoken in haste often carry consequences that linger. Silence avoids damage that cannot be undone. Faith values long-term impact over short-term release. It chooses restraint to preserve integrity. Silence shifts responsibility. When words stop, faith begins to work. The burden of explanation lifts, and divine action takes precedence. Faith recognizes that some outcomes require surrender rather than effort. Silence becomes the handoff point between human limitation and divine authority. Silence strengthens inner security. It removes dependence on approval and validation. When silence is chosen, identity no longer relies on being understood or affirmed by others. Faith anchors worth in God rather than opinion. This stability protects emotional health. Silence disarms opposition. It removes the friction needed to sustain conflict. When no reaction comes, momentum fades. Faith understands that not every attack deserves acknowledgement. Silence denies negativity its desired effect. Silence also guards timing. Some words spoken too early can delay progress. Faith respects seasons. Silence allows purpose to mature without premature exposure. Growth requires protection, and silence provides cover. Faith-filled silence does not ignore injustice. It trusts justice to unfold rightly. There is a difference between silence born of fear and silence chosen by faith. Fear avoids confrontation. Faith avoids distraction. Faith knows when to speak and when to remain still. Silence preserves focus. It redirects energy from defense to development. Rather than explaining past actions, faith invests in future preparation. Silence creates momentum by removing unnecessary detours. Silence also deepens humility. It acknowledges that understanding is limited. Faith accepts that not all truths must be clarified immediately. Humility allows growth without resistance. Silence becomes an act of submission rather than self-protection. Silence trains endurance. Waiting without explanation builds resilience. Faith grows stronger when outcomes are trusted rather than forced. Endurance formed in silence sustains progress under pressure. Silence allows results to speak. Outcomes carry authority words cannot match. Faith trusts that consistency will eventually outweigh commentary. When actions align with purpose, silence becomes evidence rather than absence. Silence refines prayer. When words cease outwardly, they intensify inwardly. Faith redirects communication upward rather than outward. This redirection strengthens dependence on God rather than circumstance. Silence also signals readiness. It shows maturity to handle greater responsibility. Those entrusted with influence must first learn restraint. Faith develops leaders through silence before visibility. Silence reduces emotional fatigue. Constant response drains energy. Faith conserves strength by choosing when to engage. This conservation supports longevity and clarity. Silence aligns with trust. Trust removes urgency. Urgency demands immediate resolution. Faith rests in timing. Silence reflects confidence that nothing essential will be lost through patience. Silence reshapes perspective. It shifts attention from reaction to reflection. Reflection deepens understanding. Faith grows in stillness, not noise. Silence is not absence of action. It is preparation for action, guided by wisdom rather than impulse. Faith-filled silence becomes strength precisely because it refuses to prove itself, choosing instead to trust that God will act where words would only interfere. Not every battle requires your defense, even when your instincts urge you to respond. The impulse to explain, correct, and justify can be powerful, especially when your intentions are misunderstood or your character is questioned. Yet wisdom reveals that constant defense can drain strength and distract from purpose. Some conflicts are not invitations to engage, but signals to step back and trust. Defending yourself often feels necessary because silence can be mistaken for guilt or weakness. But not every misunderstanding deserves clarification. Many battles grow because attention feeds them. When you respond to every challenge, you give weight to what may not deserve it. Discernment lies in knowing which moments require engagement and which require restraint. Constant defense can become exhausting. It pulls focus away from growth and progress. Time spent explaining is time taken from preparation. Energy invested in argument is energy stolen from development. Not every accusation deserves your effort. Some require distance, not dialogue. Defending every battle also risks emotional entanglement. When emotions rise, clarity fades. Words spoken in defense can escalate conflict rather than resolve it. Stepping back allows emotions to settle and perspective to return. Distance often reveals what proximity distorts. Not every battle is equal in importance. Some conflicts are distractions designed to derail momentum. Engage them can slow progress and cloud purpose. Discerning which battles matter protects direction. Purpose requires focus, and focus demands selective engagement. Defense often seeks validation. It hopes to be understood, believed, or accepted. Yet validation rooted in opinion is unstable. Depending on it creates vulnerability. Strength grows when identity rests on purpose rather than perception. Not every opinion requires response. There is also humility in choosing not to defend. It acknowledges that understanding is not always immediate or universal. Humility trusts that truth does not require constant explanation to remain true. It allows time and consistency to reveal reality. Defending every battle can compromise peace. Peace is fragile when constantly under attack. Choosing which battles to fight preserves inner calm. Calm strengthens judgment. Judgment guides wise action. Not every challenge comes from opposition. Some come from insecurity, misunderstanding, or fear in others. Engaging these battles can entangle you in issues that are not yours to resolve. Distance protects emotional boundaries. Defense can also delay justice. Sometimes stepping aside allows truth to surface naturally. When you resist the urge to interfere, outcomes often speak louder than arguments. Results carry authority that defense cannot match. Choosing not to defend requires courage. Silence can feel risky. It can feel like surrender. Yet courage recognizes that stepping back is not defeat. It is trust in a greater process. Not every battle belongs to you. Some are meant to be handled by time, truth, or divine intervention. Carrying battles that are not yours creates unnecessary burden. Release lightens the load and restores focus. Defense often keeps attention on the past. Growth requires forward movement. Lingering on conflict anchors progress to what has already happened. Leti. Go create space for what lies ahead. Not every confrontation deserves resolution through words. Some require boundaries. Boundaries protect purpose without explanation. They define limits without argument. Defense can also distort perception. When you constantly respond, you may appear reactive rather than composed. Composure communicates confidence. Confidence attracts trust. Choosing not to defend allows integrity to remain intact. Integrity does not depend on approval. It remains steady, regardless of misunderstanding. Consistency over time builds credibility without argument. Not every battle needs a witness. Public defense often invites more scrutiny. Privacy preserves dignity. Silence maintains control over narrative. Defense may offer temporary relief, but it rarely offers lasting resolution. Resolution comes through consistency, clarity, and time. Allowing space for these elements to work reduces the need for constant defense. Choosing restraint teaches discipline. Discipline strengthens leadership. Leaders must know when not to engage. Influence grows through wisdom rather than reaction. Not every battle requires your defense because your value is not determined by every voice. Focus on what matters. Protect energy. Trust the process. Let truth unfold without force. Trust is not passive belief, it is an active transfer of responsibility. When trust is placed fully in God, the weight of the fight no longer rests on human strength, strategy, or explanation. Trust shifts ownership of the battle. What was once carried internally is released upward. This transfer does not deny the presence of conflict, it reassigns who handles it. Many struggles intensify because control is clutched too tightly. The mind replays conversations, imagines outcomes, and rehearses defenses. Trust interrupts this cycle. It loosens the grip on outcomes and releases the need to manage perception, timing, and justice. The moment trust is exercised, the fight changes hands. Trust acknowledges limitation. It recognizes that human effort cannot reach every heart, change every circumstance, or correct every wrong. Rather than exhausting itself against immovable barriers, trust yields to divine authority. Yielding is not defeat, it is alignment. Alignment positions the situation under a higher power. When trust transfers the fight, peace begins to replace pressure. Anxiety feeds on responsibility. When responsibility is released, anxiety loses its fuel. Trust quiets the inner noise created by uncertainty. It steadies the heart when external conditions remain unsettled. Trust requires surrender of outcomes. Surrender is often misunderstood as weakness, yet it demands courage. Letting go of control challenges pride and fear simultaneously. Pride wants to prove capability. Fear wants to prevent loss. Trust releases both, choosing confidence over control. The transfer of the fight also changes perspective. Instead of focusing on opposition, attention shifts to obedience. Obedience asks what is required now, not what should be defended. Trust prioritizes alignment over reaction. It asks for faithfulness rather than vindication. Trust removes the burden of self-justification. When trust is present, explanations become unnecessary. There is confidence that truth will surface in time. Time becomes an ally rather than an enemy. Trust allows patience to work where urgency once ruled. When trust transfers the fight, emotional energy is preserved. Emotional exhaustion often comes from constant internal conflict. Trust creates rest within struggle. It does not deny reality, but it refuses to be dominated by it. Trust also protects relationships. Many conflicts escalate because trust is absent. When trust is present, responses become measured rather than reactive. Silence replaces accusation. Grace replaces defense. This shift changes the tone of interaction. Trust deepens humility. It accepts that understanding is incomplete. Not all answers are immediate. Trust allows mystery without panic. It acknowledges that clarity may come later and is willing to wait. Transferring the fight to God changes the nature of action. Action becomes purposeful rather than frantic. Steps are taken with intention, not desperation. Trust guides movement without anxiety. Trust also dismantles fear of exposure. When trust is rooted in God, reputation becomes secondary to integrity. Integrity is maintained regardless of misunderstanding. Trust secures identity beyond opinion. Trust requires consistency. It is not a one-time decision, but a continual posture. Each moment of uncertainty invites renewed surrender. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to reaffirm trust. When the fight is transferred, prayer becomes central. Communication shifts from outward defense to inward reliance. Prayer aligns the heart with divine will. It replaces argument with dependence. Trust also strengthens endurance. Waiting becomes bearable when trust is active. Endurance grows through repeated surrender. Each release builds confidence that trust is effective. Trust removes the illusion of isolation. It affirms divine presence within struggle. Knowing that God is engaged changes how difficulty is experienced. The fight is no longer carried alone. Transferring the fight also refines discernment. Not every challenge demands response. Trust helps distinguish between what requires action and what requires release. This discernment prevents unnecessary entanglement. Trust does not eliminate responsibility, it redefines it. Responsibility becomes obedience rather than outcome. Obedience focuses on faithfulness. Outcomes remain in God's control. When trust transfers the fight, growth occurs internally before resolution appears externally. Patience is developed. Character is strengthened. Faith matures through practice. Trust reshapes expectations. Instead of demanding immediate resolution, it allows unfolding. This flexibility reduces frustration and preserves hope. Trust also neutralizes retaliation. The desire to respond harshly fades when trust is active. Retaliation requires belief that justice must be self-executed. Trust believes justice will be handled appropriately. Transferring the fight releases mental space. Space once occupied by worry becomes available for creativity, clarity, and preparation. This space fosters progress rather than stagnation. Trust honors timing. It resists the urge to force resolution. Timing guided by trust aligns with purpose rather than impatience. When trust is fully exercised, the fight no longer defines the focus. Purpose regains prominence. Direction becomes clearer. Energy is restored. The weight that once pressed heavily on the mind begins to lift as responsibility rests where it belongs, in the hands of God rather than the limits of human control. In a world saturated with commentary, defense, and constant explanation, integrity stands quietly yet firmly. Integrity does not argue for attention or demand recognition. It remains consistent regardless of observation. When integrity is present, explanations become secondary because actions carry credibility. Results produced through integrity speak with authority that words cannot match. Explanations are often reactive. They emerge from pressure, misunderstanding, or accusation. While they may clarify in the moment, they rarely settle matters permanently. Integrity, on the other hand, establishes a pattern. Patterns create trust. Trust removes the need for constant justification. Integrity is revealed over time. It cannot be rushed or manufactured. It shows up in repeated choices made when no one is watching. These choices form character. Character determines outcome. When outcomes reflect consistency and honesty, explanation loses relevance. Results carry weight because they are tangible. They cannot be dismissed as easily as words. Words can be questioned, misinterpreted, or ignored. Results remain visible. They demonstrate commitment, discipline, and alignment. Integrity fuels sustainable results rather than temporary success. Explanations often seek validation. They attempt to control perception. Integrity releases control. It allows truth to unfold naturally. When integrity guides action, perception aligns with reality over time. Defending oneself through explanation can create dependency on approval. Integrity creates independence from opinion. This independence stabilizes confidence. Confidence grounded in integrity does not fluctuate with response. Integrity also creates clarity. It removes contradiction between words and actions. Consistency simplifies understanding. People trust what is consistent because it is predictable. Predictability grounded in integrity builds credibility. Results shaped by integrity withstand scrutiny. They endure examination because they are rooted in honesty. Even when questioned, they remain intact. Explanations may fade, but results remain as evidence. Integrity requires patience. It does not demand immediate recognition. It trusts that time will reveal truth. This patience prevents reactive behavior. Reactive explanations often compromise composure and clarity. When integrity is present, silence becomes powerful. Silence allows actions to speak. It avoids unnecessary debate. Silence supported by integrity carries confidence rather than avoidance. Integrity also protects reputation. Reputation built on words is fragile. Reputation built on results is resilient. Results create a track record that explains itself without commentary. Explanations can be distorted. They depend on interpretation. Integrity communicates without ambiguity. It aligns behavior with values. This alignment eliminates confusion. Integrity shapes leadership. Leaders with integrity do not rely on persuasion alone. Their consistency inspires trust. Trust fosters cooperation. Cooperation produces collective results. Results achieved through integrity influence others. They model discipline and accountability. Influence grows organically. Explanation attempts to persuade. Integrity inspires imitation. Integrity also provides internal peace. There is no need to remember different versions of the truth. Consistency removes internal conflict. Peace supports clarity and focus. Explanations may resolve misunderstanding temporarily, but integrity resolves it permanently. Over time, consistent behavior corrects false narratives. Truth surfaces without confrontation. Integrity strengthens resilience. When criticism arises, integrity remains steady. It does not panic or retaliate. Stability under pressure reinforces credibility. Results also provide closure. They answer questions without argument. They demonstrate capability, reliability, and purpose. Closure allows movement forward rather than lingering in defense. Integrity demands accountability. Accountability ensures growth. Growth produces results. This cycle reinforces credibility. Explanations can become distractions. They consume time and energy. Integrity redirects energy toward action. Action produces progress. Integrity also fosters humility. It does not seek attention. It accepts correction. Humility refines behavior. Refined behavior strengthens results. Results rooted in integrity endure challenges. They are not dependent on trends or approval. Endurance confirms substance. Integrity allows trust in process. It does not rush outcome. It remains faithful in effort. Faithfulness accumulates impact. Explanations often attempt to change minds. Integrity changes outcomes. Changed outcomes eventually change minds without effort. Integrity ensures that when recognition arrives, it is deserved. Recognition gained through integrity sustains rather than collapses. Results speak because they are observable. Integrity empowers them by ensuring they are authentic. Integrity and results together form a language that transcends debate. They communicate reliability, commitment, and truth without reliance on words, proving that consistent action guided by principle carries greater authority than any explanation ever could. Silence has a quiet power that is often underestimated, especially in a world that rewards reaction and constant expression. Peace is fragile when every thought is spoken and every emotion is displayed. Silence acts as a safeguard, creating space between impulse and action. In that space, peace is protected from unnecessary disruption, and clarity is allowed to grow. Peace is not merely the absence of conflict, it is the presence of inner stability. Constant reaction threatens that stability. Words spoken in haste often ignite conflict where none was necessary. Silence interrupts that cycle. It allows emotions to settle before they turn into damage. By remaining silent, the heart is given time to calm, and calm preserves peace. Silence also protects peace by limiting exposure. Not every opinion deserves access to your emotions. Not every criticism deserves a response. When silence is practiced, external noise loses its ability to disturb internal balance. Peace is maintained not by controlling others, but by controlling access to your inner world. Purpose requires focus, and focus cannot survive constant distraction, ever. Why unnecessary argument, explanation, or defense pulls attention away from what truly matters? Silence removes these distractions. It narrows attention back to direction and intention. Purpose thrives where focus is guarded. Silence creates emotional boundaries. Without boundaries, energy is drained by endless reaction. Silence conserves strength. Strength preserved can be invested in growth rather than conflict. This preservation is essential for long-term purpose. Peace is also protected through restraint. Restraint prevents escalation. Many conflicts grow because both sides feel compelled to respond. Silence refuses to fuel unnecessary tension. This refusal does not mean agreement. It means prioritizing peace over pride. Silence allows discernment to operate. Discernment requires stillness. In quiet moments, understanding sharpens. Decisions become intentional rather than reactive. Purpose depends on wise decision-making, and wisdom emerges more clearly in silence than in noise. Silence also prevents misalignment. Speaking impulsively can commit you to positions that do not reflect your true direction. Silence allows alignment to remain intact. It ensures that actions are guided by purpose rather than pressure. Peace is preserved when expectations are managed internally rather than externally. Silence reduces the urge to control perception. Letting go of that control removes anxiety. Anxiety often comes from trying to manage how others think or respond. Silence releases that burden. Purpose is often compromised by emotional exhaustion. Constant engagement depletes emotional reserves. Silence restores them. Restoration strengthens endurance. Endurance supports consistency. Consistency advances purpose. Silence also strengthens self-awareness. Without constant output, reflection increases. Reflection reveals patterns, motives, and areas for growth. Purpose beco. Mes clearer when self-awareness deepens. Silence protects peace by reducing regret. Words spoken cannot be retrieved. Silence avoids damage that words might cause. Avoiding damage preserves relationships and reputation. Preservation supports future opportunity. Purpose requires patience. Patience grows in silence. Silence teaches waiting without anxiety. Waiting develops discipline. Discipline strengthens commitment to long-term vision. Silence also shields peace from comparison. Comparison often arises from constant exposure to others' voices and opinions. Silence limits that exposure. Reduced comparison stabilizes identity. Stable identity supports purposeful action. Peace is also preserved through humility. Silence reflects humility. It acknowledges that not every thought needs expression, and not every situation requires control. Humility reduces internal tension. Reduced tension supports peace. Silence preserves purpose by preventing unnecessary detours. Detours consume time and energy. Silence keeps movement aligned with direction. Direction determines destination. Silence creates room for listening. Listening reveals insight. Insight refines strategy. Strategy enhances effectiveness. Effectiveness advances purpose. Peace flourishes where trust replaces urgency. Silence expresses trust. Trust reduces urgency. Reduced urgency lowers stress. Lower stress supports clarity. Silence also protects purpose from premature exposure. Some goals require incubation. Silence provides cover while growth occurs. Premature exposure invites interference. Silence limits interference. Silence can also be an act of discipline. Discipline governs response. Governed response maintains composure. Composure preserves peace under pressure. Purpose demands resilience. Resilience is built through restraint. Silence strengthens restraint. Strengthened restraint supports resilience. Silence shifts energy inward. Instead of reacting outwardly, energy is invested inwardly. This investment fuels development. Development supports purpose. Peace and purpose are closely connected. Without peace, purpose becomes distorted by fear and frustration. Silence nurtures peace, and peace sustains purpose. Silence does not eliminate challenge, but it controls its influence. It keeps challenges from dominating attention. Attention remains fixed on what matters most. By choosing silence, you choose alignment over argument, clarity over chaos, and direction over distraction. Peace remains guarded, purpose remains intact, and progress continues without unnecessary interference. Divine victory is rarely rushed and seldom noisy. It often emerges from moments when movement stops and trust takes over. Stillness is not inactivity, it is intentional restraint rooted in faith. Obedience is not blind compliance, it is alignment with divine direction. Together, stillness and obedience create conditions where victory unfolds without force. Stillness quiets the urge to react. Human instinct demands immediate response, immediate correction, immediate action. Stillness resists that impulse. It creates space between emotion and decision. In that space, clarity replaces confusion. Victory often begins when reaction ends. Obedience requires surrender of control. Control seeks predictability and certainty. Obedience accepts uncertainty while trusting direction. This acceptance shifts focus from outcome to faithfulness. Faithfulness aligns action with purpose rather than fear.